Welcome. Today we are going to be talking about embedded programming with the PIC18F14K50. And today Sergey presented the 7-segment LED indicator, which we will not be using the MPLAB code configurator or the MCC. We will just be doing all of the code from scratch and all the configuration ourselves, which is actually not that bad. But we will be going over how to drive a dynamic 3-character 7-segment LED indicator. And so Sergey did an amazing job as always, and we will be going over the high-level stuff, the conceptual things, but if you have any particular questions about individual commands as we are going over the programming, please check out his written tutorial on CircuitBread.com. It is amazing as always, and would hopefully clarify and answer any of your questions. So with that, let's get started about a dynamic 3-character, or a dynamic 7-segment LED indicator, just happens to be a 3-character example that we have right here. Now, the interesting thing is with a dynamic 7-segment LED indicator versus a dynamic, did I say static versus dynamic? I meant to say static versus dynamic, however that is. The comparison between the two can be seen very easily just by counting the number of pins. Now, on this particular 3-character indicator, it only has 12 pins, and that would not be possible if this were static. However, it is dynamic. So static indicators have one common pin and then different pins for each segment of each digit. And this is really straightforward. It's literally just an LED in there. You give it power and you have a common cathode. And if you have a common cathode, you connect that to ground and it lights it up. And then if you make that pin low, it doesn't light it up, and you can control them individually. However, dynamic indicators have every segment of the different digits connected together using only one pin. And then you have the common cathode or the common anode connected to a digits line. So let's look at a static indicator very briefly. So we'll flash the schematics up on screen. So with the static, you can either have that common cathode connected directly to ground or the common anode connected to VDD at all times, or you can control it or do whatever you want to do. But it is possible to just turn on that digit and turn it off. So the difference is with a dynamic display, instead of having different connections between each segment of each character to the microcontroller, all of the similar segments on the display are connected together. So if you were to look at this, all of the top segments are connected to the same GPIO on the microcontroller. All of the side segments are connected to the same, and all of the decimal points are connected to the same spot on the microcontroller. And then the only difference is that the common anodes, in this case, and could be common cathode, all of the common anodes have their own control spot. So if you're sending out a signal to each one of these LED segments and you turn on all of those common anodes or drop them to ground, then all of these 3 characters will turn on and show the exact same thing. Now that's pretty useless unless all you're showing is 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, whatever. You want to be able to control each one individually. And that has to do with that persistence of vision and a little bit of a delay. The first thing we do is we put a low voltage to the common anode. We turn off all of the segments. And this just makes sure everything's off so that we don't have any ghosting or shadows on some of the segments. We then apply a low voltage to all the segments we want to turn on in that particular character. Then we turn on the appropriate digit by applying a high voltage for the common anode indicator for that particular character. Then you perform a short delay to keep the digit on long enough to give you a bit of persistence so you can actually see it. Then you turn it off, go to the next digit position, and repeat it all again. You turn it off to make sure the ghosting doesn't happen. You figure out what segments you want to turn on the next character, and then you turn that on. And you usually keep it on for 5 milliseconds or something, not very long. And then you switch to the next one and you go through all of them, in this case, all 3 characters, and then you do it again and you do it again. And it looks like everything is on just consistently because it's doing it so quickly, but in reality, you're putting the output of what you want for the first character, turning on that particular character with your common anode, then you turn it off, figure out what you want to send to that next character, send it all out, turn on that common anode, turn it off, figure out the next one, and you just do it over and over and over again. And so that may sound complicated, but honestly, once you get the setup and software done, it is fairly straightforward. So yeah, static indicators may be easier. The software is much more straightforward, but the space demands as the amount of characters increases just gets bigger and bigger. And because of that, dynamic indicators are much more popular now. They're probably much more common than the static once you get past one individual character. And really, as I mentioned earlier, the more digits you have, the bigger the difference it makes. So for one 7-segment display, it takes 9 pins. And using the static approach, each additional digit takes another 9 pins. So in this case, again, 3 digits takes 27 pins, which we do not have on this microcontroller. If we went to 4 digits, it would be even greater. So using a dynamic approach, each additional digit only takes 1 more pin, so 3 digits only takes 11 pins. 4 digits for a static would be 36 pins, and for a dynamic like this one is, but with 4 characters, it would be 12 pins. So we'd only need 1 additional pin versus what we have here versus another 9. So the dynamic indicators, they really do scale much, much better. Okay, so that is the idea going on behind this approach and will, of course, control what we do in the software. So let's jump in and see the software that Sergey put together. I'm not going to show you how to create the code, and you can get this code and copy it right off of CircuitBread.com. But you should know how to set up a project by now, so I'm just going to jump straight into the code, and then we will go through it and show how we approached this. Okay, so as we jump into the program, you can see, obviously, the first portion of it is all just configuration stuff, so we don't even need to worry about anything above line 57 because we've already configured these bits according to settings that we've had in previous tutorials, so it's not a big deal. But then in 57, we define the crystal frequency. In 59, we do our general header file, so we don't really worry about it. Now, 61 through 68, as you see it, it defines the different numbers. So basically, we look at that schematic that we connected these individual segments to, and we see that segment A is connected to RC3, segment B is connected to RC7, C, RC1. And instead of writing that out in binary every time and trying to say, oh yes, RC3 is segment A, we just say, no, this is A is this, and then we can control it much easier. So that's all we're doing in this definition is figuring out exactly the names of these segments. Now we use that information to make our lives even easier in lines 70 through 82, where we create an array. And in that array, we're basically showing, hey, if you want to show 0, you need to turn on segments A, B, C, D, E, and F. If you want to turn on 1, that's very, very simple. You only need to get those right 2 segments turned on. That is simply segments B and C, and so on. So now we have an array instead of having to individually say, oh yes, we want to show the number 7, that's this, this, and this. We create an array that if you just say, give me array position 7, it gives you the output that you want, where you are ORing all of those predefined A, B, C, D, E, F, and G segments together to turn on those segments in the way you want to. So 61 through 82 is fairly straightforward. It's a little bit tedious to kind of get that definition figured out in the first place, but it makes your life so much easier once you deal with it. Once you get it up, you don't have to mess with it anymore, and it is very, very powerful. So that is just it making it so that we don't have to do anything once we get into the heart of the program that is complicated and trying to figure out, what did I want to do here? What did I want to do here? You just say, hey, I want this number, and bam, we get it, and it will show up on the 7-segment display. So in 84, we have a semi-random number of 678 that we are going to be displaying. In the future, we can set it up so that we can take an input of some sort and output it on this. But for right now, all we're worried about is getting the 7-segment display working. And so we're just going to throw that number in for the heck of it right now. And then 85 is just the number, the individual digit that we are currently showing. And that will be obvious why we did that here momentarily. The first couple of lines of main is simply 89 through 91. That's configuring the RC port and the RB port as an output. And then finally in 91, we're setting all the RC pins high to kind of start the process. It isn't until we get into the while loop that things start to get fairly interesting. So in 94, as we mentioned in the process, we want to start out with everything being turned off to reduce that ghosting. So in line 94, we set all of the RB pins low to shut down all of the segments. And then we do a simple switch case where we are looking at, and we're like, if the digit is 1, so are we looking at the first digit, the second digit, or the third digit? If the first digit is 1, then we take that number and we divide it by 100, because let's say, and in this case, the number is 678, we want to display 6. So we take 678, divide it by 100, and then we don't care that there's remainders or whatever. All we care about is that 6. And so we say, all right, we are going to show 6. So in 98, once we have figured out what number we want to display with that number divided by 100, that then goes into our digit generator function, and output that to lat C, or port C. And then in line 99, we are turning on digit 1, so it is turning on the whole digit, so it will now display. Then we break, jump out of that switch, go to that delay so it has a little bit of that persistence so that we can actually see it. We increase our digit, so we just did our first digit, now let's do our second digit, and we jump back up, we turn off everything so that there's, again, none of that ghosting, goes into the switch where we are doing the digit in 95. Now we're like, oh, we're on digit 2. So you jump to case 1, and it looks exactly like case 0, but in 103, you can see we are going to RB6, which digit 2 is connected to, and then instead of dividing the number by 100, we are getting the modulo of the number, which is basically just the remainder. So you take that number, you divide it by 100, take that remainder, and then divide that by 10. So again, you look up at 678, you get the modulo of that is you divide it by 100, and that's just 78, and you take 78, divide that by 10, and that gives you 7. So that 7 is now displayed. You turn on the common anode pin, it shows it for 5 seconds because of line 110, and goes back through and does the exact same thing for digit 3, but now you're just doing the entire number in modulo 10. So if you divide 678 by 10, that gives you a remainder of 8. And so it will show that 8 on the last digit. And finally, at this point, in 112, our digit is greater than 2. We've gone through everything, and it's like, okay, we've done that. And we go back to the beginning, and we do that whole thing over and over and over and over again. And that is it. It is very simple. It is a beautiful thing. It is fairly straightforward. I think the most difficult thing for me is, for some reason, I struggle with modulo. I do not know why. Every time I deal with it, I'm like, remainder, that's all it is. Why do I struggle with this? But other than that, it's very, very straightforward. So with that, let's turn this thing on and see what it looks like when it's running. We are going to make and program the device. And 678, right there. It's a beautiful thing. And hey, let's do another number just to keep ourselves on our toes. So let's do 397. And then we do the same exact thing. It goes through, and then 397. See? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right, wonderful. Again, I feel like the code on this one is really quite straightforward, but if I'm wrong, if there's a part that you do not understand, go check out Sergey's written tutorial. Again, he goes line by line and explains every single line that he does in great detail, so it is super useful. He actually gives as homework the ability to put in a button. So you get a button and then have it count every time you push it. So we start with 397, but if we put in a button and just started tapping it, it'd go up to 398, 399, 400, and go through like that. So if you want to really make sure you understand this well, take the things that you learned in our button tutorial, apply them here, and see if you can control this output. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully you found it as interesting as I did, learning about the dynamic display and how to do it. If you have any questions, please check out the written tutorial that Sergey did, because again, not only does he go into line by line in-depth descriptions of what we're doing in the code, he goes very in-depth on the technology behind it. He has all the schematics, everything there. So this is just a really good high-level overview, but if you have questions, please go check that out, or leave a question here down in the comments of YouTube. If you did like this video, give it a like, subscribe to our channel, all that good stuff, and we will see you in the next one. Take care. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this video. Did you know that CircuitBread.com does more than just tutorials? Besides tools, textbooks, and other things, we host an ever-growing library of math and electronics-related equations and glossary terms. Don't have the entire table of integrals or Faraday's second law memorized? We gotcha. Go check them all out.